YouTube, welcome back to the Blades to Be shop for another project video. Hey, pretty excited about this one today. We're actually going to hit the road and go check out this project over at the customer's location. Don't know what I'm going to see when I get there. I've never been there, but hopefully I'll be able to get at least a little bit of video while we're on site. But the project is, he has a Bobcat that has a hydraulic system on it, and his Bobcat uses the low flow hydraulic system, and apparently there's another version that has a high flow hydraulic system. But wherever the lines run for this hydraulic system, they're kind of susceptible to getting bumped, banged around when you're using your Bobcat. So they make a nice big steel cover to go over top of those. And unfortunately, he purchased the high flow cover and it does not match up and fit exactly on the low flow lines that he has. So we're going to go over there, take a look at the Bobcat, and we're going to take a look at this box, and we're going to see if we can't modify the box a little bit, refabricate it a little bit to see if we can get it to fit. That's how he's explained it to me over the phone. We'll get over there and we'll see exactly what we're going to get into. I'm going to grab some calipers and a tape measure and some paper, and we're just going to go over there and see what we find and take some pictures, measure what we can. Trying to do that over there and save him having to bring the Bobcat over here and leave that parked in my driveway while we're trying to work on it. So that's the goal. As always, I appreciate you watching these videos. For those of you subscribed to the channel, thanks for coming back and watching another one. If you're new to the channel, if you like what you see, drop a like, drop a comment on there, and I'd really encourage you to check out some of the other videos on the channel. And if you like them, hit that subscribe button and you can support the Blades to Be channel as we continue to try and grow here in 2022. All right, let's go ahead and jump in the car and let's head over and take a look at this Bobcat. Let's go. All right, we're in the field today working on this Bobcat, and we've got the wrong bracket to mount as a cover over these hydraulic lines. So we're going to take and modify the bracket. So where it bolts on, the boss wants to hit over here, so we've got to move it down about 1/2 inch and over about 1/2 inch. So that's where it's got to bolt back into. Pretty tight window. It's kind of hard to measure, and we've got to get it so that it fits just in that space. Look at these other pieces here. All right, so this is what we need to adjust for. I've got to move that round boss. I've got to come down 1/2 inch. I've got to go over about 1/2 inch in order to get that so that it'll come through and fit around that coupling. And then have it match up so the top one still bolts on. And then this other piece bolts onto the outside, so we've got to move the boss on one of those too and get this all to line up and bolt back in place. So I think if we just move that bottom one down 1/2 inch and over 1/2 inch, should be good. All right, we're back at the shop. We've got our parts here. So basically I need to take this boss and I need to move it down 1/2 inch and over 1/2 inch. So it's going to end up over here. It'll be a little bit off the plate. It's not welded all the way around, so I think we'll still have plenty of weld, and I'll be able to sort of tack it like a butt weld over here and get a little bit of weld on it as well. So I'm going to measure exactly where I am here. I'll measure the distance between these two so that I can position it. So my plan is get it off, get it ground off, get it all cleaned up, measure, get it set in place, tack it in place, and then after it's tacked in place, then I'll drill the hole back through the plate. This does have a square on the back of it to go with the carriage bolt that goes through it. So I'll see if I'm able to file that square back in there afterwards to do that. So I don't know, I'm just debating whether I'm going to line it up and drill it first and then try to file the square. I don't know, we'll play with that a little bit. But bottom line is I'll get it mounted onto this bracket first. We'll get it down and over its 1/2 inch. And then once that's done, then this piece goes in there like that. So then do the same thing. So it's going to mount on there as such. So we've got to cut this one off of here as well and then move it over and down 1/2 inch. But my plan is I'm going to put a bolt through that top one, and then I'll put a bolt through the bottom one, and that's how I'm going to do to get it lined up, get it tacked in place, and then I'll drill the hole back through there as well. This one just has to be round on the back side, so it won't be any trouble. So getting them lined up shouldn't be a problem. Just need to measure that first one and get it moved to 1/2 by 1/2. When we go to put it back on the machine, if I measured not quite right, because it's not, I know, pretty narrow gap to be able to hit in there. It was a little tough to measure exactly on all these holes. So I may have to just grind a little bit off the bottom or the top to make sure it doesn't hit, to slide it in after we move it. But we should be pretty close with our 1/2 by 1/2. Let's go ahead and get these things ground apart. 3 point, not quite 3 1/4. Just about though. 3.225, and in between here, 2.563. Draw a quick sketch of this, make sure I don't lose track of the orientation before I start cutting it apart. And also went ahead and just added the 1/2 inch to my 2 measurements to make sure I knew where I needed to move this to when I get ready to line it back up to put it back together. All right, we've got our measurements. Now we'll get this ground apart. Well, I quickly realized I'm pretty limited on space in there between these two bosses, so not able to do near as much with the angle grinder as I was hoping to. So after giving that a little bit, did kind of the pieces I could. I went, grabbed a couple other tools, thought maybe I had something else that was going to get in there, but really finally just had to break down and pull out the Dremel tool with the carbide burr on it. And not quite as fast, but definitely it will work, and it does remove material fairly quickly. So got in there with the grinder again, cleaned as much as I could, and then got that burr set up. That burr is one of my least favorite tools in the shop, not because it's not effective. It removes a lot of material, it does pretty well, but it throws off those tiny little metal slivers, and even with these big heavy leather gloves on, those slivers are all over the bench, so I can tell you for the rest of the day, I'm going to be picking little tiny slivers out of my hands. Here's the next day, and here's a couple of examples of those little tiny slivers, kind of like acupuncture, like little electricity every time you rub them up against something. But they eventually come out, and definitely worth it because that carbide burr definitely moves metal. Let's see if this thing's ready to come off there. It can take a bit to get through those heavy welds, so back to grinding some more. And also I'm trying to minimize how much damage I do to this since I've got to fill the hole back in and fill it all back in with some weld to make it look good when I'm done. So just take your time, back and forth, grind a little bit, hit a little bit, and eventually it's going to come free. There we go, one down. And pretty quick work, get back in there with the angle grinder after that's off of there and clean it up, flatten it out, get ready to tackle and start working on the next one. Always a fun challenge trying to figure out how to hold some of these odd shaped pieces. All right, start a little test fit and test measure here. Since I'm locating this only half on the plate and half off in space, it was a little hard to get it held in place and located. I finally got some Sharpie marks on there and then put it in the vise, lined it up with my Sharpie marks as best I could, used the C-clamp, got it kind of snug on there, measured fit, and finally got it clamped in place where I was happy with it. And ready to go ahead and get some weld on there. Even with this thick material, the welding seems to be going okay. Once I get this flipped over, you can see with the boss hanging off in space a little bit, we've got a little bit of backfill to do. I want to build up the end of the boss and fill in that square. Make sure that bolt is going to have a good flat place to sit. Alright, I think that turned out looking alright. We filled in the backside enough where we moved it. I'll punch the hole back through there. We'll see if we can make it square or not. And then we'll bolt this to our other piece and get that other one welded in place. And drilling through weld can be a little bit tough. I've just got it turning slow, using some light pressure, especially the rough part there on the outer edge or the outer part of the weld, even though it's inside the hole. But once you get going, once you cut through, it starts to drill pretty decent and able to get the hole in there without any trouble at all. Just take your time, go slow. To line up the second boss on here, I go through the existing ones, put that bolt all the way through. Going to be able to put a nut on the back and tighten that once I get it lined up where I want to. And then the other boss, I'm going to stick a bolt through there, and it's just going to sit basically loose on top of the plate since we don't have the hole in the bottom yet. And then I'm going to use a square to line this up and just make sure that the bracket is a nice straight line when they're going to be tacked and welded together. So that bolt's just sitting there, make sure my holes are going to line up, get it nice and square, and we're ready to tack this in place. Now the big test, we'll check our alignment. The bolts are already pretty snug in those holes, so it doesn't come out by hand, but I go grab a punch and it is just a nice light tap. Well, we'll go drill our hole through there. We're about done. Well, the fabrication on these is complete, so we'll head back over and we'll see how these fit. I think the welds turned out not too bad. That's pretty much maxing out my welder is 3/8 plate. That is as thick as it'll go, so I think we did all right in there. Built up a little bit, gave it a flat spot for the bolt head. I think it'll fly. Let's go see if it bolts on and get some use out of this piece. Well, here is the install. The box fit. You can see that, we put 1/2 inch and there is really no room to go anymore under that. And I did have to grind just a little bit down here on the flat to get around those lines. But we've got that on there. And that's where it bolts up onto the machine. So we got this one moved down and over 1/2 inch. matching on the other side. I think it turned out all right. Well, YouTube, that's a wrap on another project video here in the Blades to Be shop. Hope you enjoyed watching as we modified and refabricated this little high flow line cover to fit onto this low flow Bobcat machine. The customer was really happy with how it turned out. He had purchased the part, wasn't able to return it, and it was really just going to become some scrap in his shop if he didn't find a way to modify it. So he was very happy we were able to get over there and do that, and I'm pretty happy with how the project turned out. I think for challenging measuring and modifying, and anytime you cut a piece apart and then have to put it back together and try and get things to line up, at least for me, that's always a bit of a challenge, so I'm always happy when those kind of projects turn out. So even if you're not modifying a piece for the Bobcat, hopefully you picked up some tips in here on how to cut things apart, get them back together, get them lined up, maybe something that can help you in your shop on your next project that you have going on in there. As always, appreciate you watching these videos. Huge shout out and thank you to my subscribers on the channel. Anybody, if you're new to the channel, one of my subscribers, always appreciate comments. Drop a like on the video if you like this one. And if you're new to the channel, really encourage you to get out there and check out some of the other videos on the channel. And if you like it, would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and support the Blades to Be channel as we continue to grow here in 2022. Until next time, I hope you're out in your own shop working on some projects of your own. I'll be here in the Blades to Be shop working on some other projects and working on that next video to get loaded up here for you. Until then, y'all take care.